What if I told you that right now, in this very moment we're living through, a massive shift is happening in society that's been building for decades, and most people are completely blind to it until it hits them square in the face? Women who spent years shouting from the rooftops that they don't need a man, that they can do it all on their own, that men are obsolete or toxic or whatever the flavor of the month was, are suddenly waking up to a cold, harsh reality where survival isn't as simple as hashtags and empowerment seminars promised. Single mothers, career women, feminists of all stripes, they're flooding social media with desperate pleas, begging for men to come back, to step up, to rescue them and their kids from the brink of financial ruin, homelessness, and outright despair. But here's the kicker that will keep you watching all the way to the end. This time, unlike every other era in history where men rode in like knights to save the day, millions of men are simply saying no. They're walking away for good and they're not looking back. Stick with me, because by the time we're done here, you'll see exactly why this is happening, how deep it goes, and what it means for the future of relationships, family, and society itself. If you're getting value from this already, go ahead and smash that like button. Share this video with any man you know who needs to hear this truth, and subscribe right now for more no holds barred, angry guy content that cuts through the noise and tells it like it is. And listen, if you're tired of watching your hard earned money vanish or getting wrecked in this volatile market, head over to Angry's Crypto Academy. It's linked right down in the description. That's where I teach regular guys like you how to properly buy, sell, trade, and most importantly, safeguard your crypto assets so you can actually build and protect real wealth in a world that's trying to take it all from you. Go check it out now, enroll, and start taking control. Click that link in the description before you forget. Let me paint this picture for you because it's not just some abstract theory or angry rant. It's happening in real time all around us, and the evidence is piling up so high you couldn't ignore it if you tried. Imagine this: a woman in her mid 30s, maybe early 40s, who spent the last decade or more living what she thought was the dream. She bought into the narrative hook, line, and sinker, the one that said career first, independence above all, relationships are optional. And if you do settle down, make sure you're with someone who checks all the modern boxes but never dares to lead or provide in the traditional sense, because that's apparently oppressive. She might have had kids along the way, maybe with a guy who was fun for a while but bailed when things got real. Or maybe she chose the single mom by choice route because why not? The government and society told her she'd be celebrated as a hero. Fast forward to today, November 2025, and the economy isn't just tough, it's brutal. Inflation has been eating away at everyone's purchasing power for years now, but it's hitting certain groups harder than others. Groceries that cost $200 a week a few years ago are now pushing $400 or more. Rent and mortgages are through the roof in most cities. Jobs that used to pay a living wage are either gone, automated away, or filled with people willing to work for less because desperation breeds competition. And let's be crystal clear here. When the economy tightens like this, the people who suffer first and hardest are those without a solid safety net, without dual incomes, without someone else sharing the load. This is where the story gets real, and I want you to really let this sink in. We're seeing an explosion of videos, posts, tweets, TikToks, you name it, from women who are straight up breaking down on camera. Single moms sitting in their cars, tears streaming down their faces, talking about how they can't afford formula or diapers anymore, how they're working 2 or 3 jobs and still falling behind, how the child support isn't coming in, or it's a joke amount that barely covers a week's worth of daycare. They're admitting, often for the first time publicly, that being a single parent isn't the empowering journey they were sold. It's exhausting, soul crushing, and in many cases, downright impossible without help. And who are they turning to? Not the government, because food stamps and welfare programs have been stretched thin for years. And with budgets exploding and politicians arguing over scraps, the safety net has more holes than net, not their girlfriends. Because empowerment circles are great for venting, but terrible for paying bills. No, they're turning to men. Random men online. Exes they ghosted or divorced. Men in general. The pleas are everywhere if you're paying attention. Where are all the good men? Men need to step up for these kids who aren't even theirs. Real men would help a woman in need. It's almost poetic in its irony, isn't it? Think about the messaging we've been bombarded with for the past 2 decades. Men are trash. The future is female. I don't need no man. Kill all men jokes that somehow weren't jokes. The Me Too movement that turned innocent until proven guilty on its head and made workplace interactions a minefield. Divorce laws that incentivize women to initiate 70 to 80% of breakups while walking away with the kids, the house, alimony, and child support, often leaving the man bankrupt and broken. Red pill content didn't create the walking away movement. It simply shone a light on what was already happening and gave men the language to describe it. Men looked around and said, why would I sign up for this? Why risk everything? Your finances, your freedom, your mental health, your future for a system that's rigged against you from the start. Passports are being applied for in record numbers. Guys are moving abroad to places where women haven't been brainwashed into entitlement. Others are going full monk mode, building businesses, hitting the gym, stacking crypto, traveling solo, and enjoying peace that they never knew was possible. And the craziest part, they're happier than ever. No drama, no nagging, no walking on eggshells, no threat of false accusations destroying your life. Just freedom. But back to these women, because this is where the storytelling really kicks in. And I need you to follow me down this path. Picture one specific example that's representative of thousands. There's this viral video going around right now of a woman in her late 30s, 2 kids, decent looking but clearly worn out from life. She's sitting on her couch, phone propped up, and she's crying. Not theatrically, but that ugly cry where you know someone's at their absolute limit. She starts off by saying how she always prided herself on being independent, how she left her ex because he wasn't ambitious enough or whatever the excuse was, how she thought she could do it better on her own with some help from the state and her family. Then reality hit. Her job laid her off during the last round of cuts. Inflation made everything double in price practically overnight. Her car broke down, and the repair bill was more than she had in savings. Because let's be honest, savings aren't really a thing when you're a single income supporting multiple people. The kids need clothes, school supplies, food that's not just ramen every night. And she's looking at the camera, begging, literally begging any man watching to understand that there are good women out there struggling, that not all women are like the crazy ones online, that someone needs to step in and help because these kids deserve better. Multiply that by tens of thousands. Support groups for single moms that used to be about empowerment are now war rooms for survival strategies, how to apply for more assistance, how to find side hustles, how to date quickly for financial stability without admitting that's what they're doing. Dating apps are flooded with profiles that casually mention my kids come first while showing party photos from 5 years ago, wondering why the high value men swipe left immediately. And here's where it gets even more intense. The government isn't coming to save them. Politicians love to talk about supporting mothers, but when push comes to shove, the money printer can't run forever without consequences. Deficits are in the trillions. Interest payments on the national debt are eating up more of the budget than defense spending. Social programs are being cut or capped in ways that don't make headlines but absolutely devastate the people relying on them. Food banks are running empty, shelters are full, and winter is coming, literally and figuratively. Women did this to themselves. Not every individual woman, of course. There are always exceptions, good ones who didn't buy the hype. But collectively, absolutely. Radical feminism told them men were optional, that traditional roles were prisons, that they could have it all: career, kids, freedom, without compromise. Media reinforced it, celebrities flaunted it, schools taught it, And an entire generation of women ran with that message straight off a cliff. Hey guys, in a world pushing you to own nothing and be happy, crypto is your key to survival. Join Angry's Crypto Academy to master buying, selling, and trading crypto. Make huge profits and safeguard your wealth. Plus, discover the one crypto virtually no one is talking about, poised to create new millionaires in the upcoming bull run. The link is in the description of the video below. Go check it out now, only to look down mid fall and realize there was no parachute. Now they're hitting the ground, and the men who used to be there to catch them, gone. Not out of spite, well, maybe a little for some, but mostly out of self preservation. Why jump after someone who pushed you away in the first place? Why risk drowning to save someone who spent years saying they could swim better than you? This isn't about hating women. This is about patterns, consequences, and the natural outcome when you destroy the incentives for cooperation between the sexes. Men provide when it's appreciated and rewarded, when it's demanded as a right while being disrespected as a person. Yeah, that's when men vanish. Let that simmer for a second. We're not talking about a few bitter incels in basements. We're talking about doctors, engineers, tradesmen, entrepreneurs, productive, high functioning men across the board who have quietly opted out. They're not protesting in the streets. They're not making videos begging anyone to change. They're just living their lives on their terms, and the silence is deafening. And the women noticing this first, the ones who thought they were winning the game, they're panicking because biology doesn't care about ideology. Kids need fathers, or at the very least, stable male providers. Societies that raise generations of boys without fathers collapse eventually. Crime goes up, education outcomes tank, mental health crises explode. We're already seeing the early stages of all of it. But let's go deeper into the psychology here, because this is where the real storytelling happens. Imagine growing up as a boy in the 90s or 2000s. Every TV show portrayed dads as bumbling idiots. Teachers, mostly female, treated boys like defective girls. Media told you that masculinity itself was toxic. Then you hit dating age, and the rules were impossible. Be confident but not arrogant. Provide, but don't expect traditional roles in return. Be emotional but strong. Chase, but respect boundaries that change daily. You work hard anyway, because that's what men do. You build something. And if you're lucky enough to find a partner, you pour into the relationship, only to watch 50% of marriages end in divorce, with the man losing everything in most cases. Or worse, stay in a miserable marriage for the kids while dying inside a little every day. At some point, a critical mass of men asked, "What's the upside here?" And when the honest answer came back, basically none, the walking began. It's not revenge, it's evolution in real time. Men adapting to a hostile environment by removing themselves from it, like animals leaving a dried up watering hole for greener pastures. And now the watering hole is drying up completely for the ones left behind. We're seeing articles, actual mainstream articles, wondering where all the men went. Economists scratching their heads about falling marriage rates, birth rates collapsing to historic lows, workforce participation for men hitting levels not seen since the Great Depression. But they refuse to connect the dots back to the cultural war that's been waged against masculinity for decades. This is part one of what will be a massive wake up call. And trust me, it's only getting started. Let me take you deeper into the timeline now, because this didn't happen overnight. This was decades in the making. And if you understand the sequence of events, you'll see why there's no reversing it. No grand comeback, no white knight cavalry riding in at the last second. This is the point of no return. Go back to the early 2000s. The internet was still young, forums were popping off, and the first wave of men started noticing patterns. They watched their fathers get destroyed in divorce court. They saw their older brothers lose houses, custody, half their income, and in some cases, their will to live after a single allegation with zero proof. These weren't fringe stories, these were the guys next door. But when they spoke up, they were called bitter, losers, or worse. So they went quiet, started private forums, shared spreadsheets of divorce lawyers to avoid, and began warning the next generation. That was the birth of what people later mocked as the manosphere, but it was never about hate, it was about survival data. By the time 2010 rolled around, YouTube became the university that mainstream media and colleges refused to be. Channels with sand in the titles, entrepreneurs in exile, coaches who'd been through the ringer. They laid out the incentives in cold, hard numbers. Marriage rates started bending downward for the first time in recorded history. Not a blip, a trend. Birth rates in the West began their free fall. Economists called it a mystery. Anyone paying attention knew exactly what was happening. And then came the 2020s, the great accelerator. COVID lockdowns destroyed small businesses, many of them owned by men who were already the sole providers. Remote work exposed how many women in corporate jobs were coasting on busy work while men carried the revenue generating roles. Stimulus checks and eviction moratoriums temporarily papered over the cracks, but when those ran out, reality slammed in like a freight train. At the exact same time, social media algorithms rewarded the most extreme female voices, the ones calling all men trash, celebrating single motherhood as a flex, mocking broke men, while simultaneously demanding they pay for dates, rent, and kids that weren't theirs. Every day for years, young men opened their phones to a fire hose of contempt aimed directly at them for existing, for earning less than six figures by 25, for not wanting to date single mothers of three, for daring to have boundaries. And then society wondered why those same young men stopped approaching, stopped simping, stopped caping entirely. By 2023, the phrase men are going their own way wasn't a fringe slogan anymore. It was a lifestyle millions were quietly living. Gym memberships for men exploded, passport applications spiked, crypto wallets multiplied because men realized centralized systems could strip their assets overnight in a divorce or false accusation. Vasectomy rates among men under 30 started climbing so fast that clinics couldn't keep up with demand. Think about that for a second. Young, healthy men choosing permanent sterility rather than risk being trapped. That's not anger talking, that's a calculated risk assessment. And now, November 2025, we're watching the other side of that equation play out in real time. The wall isn't a meme anymore. It's a brick and mortar reality made of overdue bills, empty refrigerators, and eviction notices. Women who spent their prime years chasing careers that turned out to be glorified PowerPoint factories, chasing excitement with men who had no intention of committing, chasing validation from likes and retweets. They're hitting 35, 38, 42, and looking around for the life they were promised. And it's not there. The high value men they rejected at 25 because he wasn't tall enough or didn't make enough or was too nice. Those guys leveled up. They got jacked, stacked money, traveled the world, built businesses, and learned game overseas, where women still smile when a man walks into a room. They're not coming back to save anyone. The average guys who would have gladly married them at 28, many of them looked at the divorce statistics, looked at the cultural contempt, looked at the legal risks, and said hard pass. They're content with peace, video games, occasional hookups with zero strings, and sleep that isn't interrupted by drama at 2 a.m. I want you to picture a specific woman right now. Call her Jessica. She's 37. Two kids, different fathers, neither in the picture. She has a master's degree in communications and a job that pays $52,000 before taxes in a city where rent for a two-bedroom is $2,800. She spent her 20s taking girls' trips to Tulum, dating men who excited her but never respected her, posting boss babe quotes on Instagram while racking up credit card debt for brunches and Stanley Cups. She laughed at the idea of settling down before 35 because she had time and deserved the best. A fast forward to today. Jessica is on TikTok live at 11 p.m. after the kids are asleep, makeup smeared, wine glass in hand, telling whoever will listen that she's a good woman, that she goes to church sometimes, that her kids are well behaved, and that there has to be a good man out there willing to look past her past and help her build a future. The comments are brutal, half telling her she's entitled, the other half silent because the men who used to white knight are gone. They're in the gym, they're in Thailand, they're building their crypto portfolios. They're asleep by 10 because tomorrow is deadlift day, not drama day. Jessica is not a villain. She's a product of a culture that lied to her relentlessly, that told her she could wait as long as she wanted, that the men would always be waiting with open arms and open wallets, no matter how many bodies or how much baggage she accumulated, that her degree would insulate her from economic reality, that the government would always be there as husband of last resort. Every institution, media, academia, government, even many churches sold her that fantasy. And now the bill is due and the men she needs to pay it are nowhere to be found. This is happening on a mass scale. Food pantries that used to see mostly elderly people now have lines of single mothers with toddlers on their hips. Domestic violence shelters, originally built for abused women, are turning away women because they're full of single mothers who are about to be homeless because they can't pay rent. The same politicians who championed strong, independent women are now quietly admitting in closed door meetings that the collapsing birth rate is a national security crisis. But they still won't say the quiet part out loud. You cannot have a functioning civilization when half the population has been taught to despise and exploit the other half. Let's talk about the kids for a minute because this is where it gets truly heartbreaking. These children didn't ask to be born into this experiment. They're growing up watching their mother spiral, watching the absence of stable male energy turn homes into war zones of stress and scarcity. Boys are learning from day one that being male is a liability. Teachers medicate them for being energetic. Courts side against fathers by default. Media portrays them as future oppressors before they even hit puberty. Girls are learning that men are walking ATMs who exist to serve them and then disappear when no longer needed. This is how you raise broken generations. We already see the leading indicators: youth crime exploding in every major Western city, teen mental health crises that make previous generations look like stoics, young men checking out entirely, record numbers, not in work, not in school, not even looking, and young women wondering why nobody wants to commit when their role models spent years teaching them that commitment is oppression. The coping mechanisms from the blue pill crowd are getting hilarious at this point. Just get a better job. She's already working 60 hours between two gigs. Move to a cheaper area. She tried. Rents are up everywhere. Date down. The men below her are even less equipped to carry two adults and then multiple kids. Get on government assistance. The wait lists are years long, and the benefits barely cover cereal and bus fare. And every week, a new article drops. Where have all the good men gone? Written by a 39-year-old journalist who spent her fertile years riding the carousel and now wants a 6 foot plus, six-figure earner to wife her up tomorrow and love her three kids as his own. The comment sections are ratioed into oblivion by men who simply write, "We're right here, you priced us out." This is the great reaping. You sow radical individualism, contempt for family, and the demonization of masculinity. You reap loneliness, poverty, and societal collapse. And the reaping is just getting started. I need you to understand something crystal clear. Men didn't abandon women out of pettiness. Men abandoned a system that declared war on them while demanding they still show up to fight and die for it. When you make it financially suicidal to marry, legally dangerous to date, socially unacceptable to lead, and culturally mandatory to apologize for existing, men do what men have always done. They adapt, they survive, they go where they're treated best. And right now, that where they're treated best is anywhere but here, anywhere but with entitled, ungrateful government-backed liability machines who were told from birth that men are the enemy. The pleas are only going to get louder. The tears are only going to flow harder. The accusations of immaturity and incel are going to fly faster as the desperation peaks. But the men have already voted with their feet, their passports, their crypto wallets, and their vasectomies. The silence you're hearing isn't confusion, it's resolve. We're watching the end of an era that began sometime around 1965 with no fault divorce and the sexual revolution, accelerated through the 90s with girl power media, detonated in the 2000s with Me Too and social media validation loops, and is now reaching its logical conclusion in 2025 and beyond. An entire civilization bet everything on the idea that men are disposable, that women can do it all alone, that family is optional, and that government can replace husbands and fathers. The verdict is in. The experiment failed, and the people who pushed it hardest are the ones paying the highest price, but it's not over yet. There are still phases left. The bargaining phase, where they'll offer to split bills 50-50 and not expect much if you'll just come back. The anger phase, where laws will get even more anti male to try to force men back into the plantation. The depression phase, when the reality fully sinks in that it's permanent. And finally, acceptance, if they ever get there. Men, most of us are already in acceptance. We accepted the game was rigged, so we stopped playing it. We accepted that peace is worth more than sex. Freedom is worth more than validation. Self respect is worth more than being a utility. And that, my friends, is the part they never saw coming. Let me pull the lens back even further now, because what we're witnessing isn't just a dating market crash or some temporary economic hiccup. It's the death rattle of an entire civilizational operating system that was built on a foundation of lies. And those lies are being exposed one overdue rent payment, one empty grocery cart, one tear soaked TikTok at a time. Picture the year 1965. No fault divorce laws start rolling out across the West like a slow moving tsunami. For the first time in human history, a woman could walk away from a marriage for any reason or no reason at all. Keep the house, keep the kids, keep half or more of the assets, and force the man to keep paying for a family he was no longer allowed to live with or lead. The sales pitch was freedom and equality. The reality was the single greatest transfer of wealth and power from men to women in recorded history. Men didn't riot, they didn't burn cities, they just shrugged, worked harder, paid the alimony, and showed up every other weekend with a forced smile while their ex wives moved the new boyfriend in 3 months later. Fast forward to the 1970s and 80s. Feminism's second wave told women they could have it all: go to college, climb the corporate ladder, sleep with whoever you want, delay marriage and kids until you're ready, and the world will wait for you. Media created the superwoman archetype: beautiful, successful, sexually liberated, and still somehow home in time to bake cookies with perfectly behaved children. Birth control and abortion on demand removed the last remaining biological consequences for high body counts and serial monogamy. Roe v. Wade in 1973 turned the sexual revolution from theory into practice. Men adapted again, started using protection religiously, started keeping one foot out the door, started noticing that commitment was a one-way street with a guillotine at the end. The 1990s brought us the Duluth model, the Violence Against Women Act, and primary aggressor laws that essentially made it impossible for a man to be seen as the victim of domestic violence, even when he was the one with the black eye and the knife wounds. Campuses started expelling male students based on accusations alone. The term "believe women" wasn't invented yet, but the blueprint was already there. Men started keeping their heads down, started avoiding marriage like the plague, started pouring their energy into careers and hobbies instead of families. Marriage rates dipped, but the economy was booming, so nobody in power cared. Then the 2000s hit, and the internet gave every man a window into what was really going on. Divorce horror stories that used to be whispered in barbershops were now documented with court filings and receipts. Fathers' rights groups popped up only to be labeled misogynist hate groups. The phrase happy wife, happy life became the national motto, which really meant shut up, pay up, and smile while she destroys you. Men started opting for cohabitation instead of marriage because at least that way they could keep their house and retirement account when, not if, she bailed. By the 2000s, the mask was completely off. Me Too turned believe women into a cultural religion. A single tweet could end a man's career with zero evidence and zero due process. Aziz Ansari got canceled for a bad date. Johnny Depp lost everything until video evidence finally surfaced years later. The message to every man was crystal clear. One wrong word, one wrong look, one accusation from a woman you've never even met, and your life is over. Dating became a legal minefield. Workplaces became paranoia factories. Men started doing the math and realized that the juice wasn't worth the squeeze by a factor of 1,000. Social media poured gasoline on the fire. Instagram and OnlyFans turned average women into mini celebrities, with thousands of orbiters paying their bills for feet pics and attention. Dating apps gave the top 10% of men a harem and the bottom 80% radio silence. The average woman could get 500 likes in an hour, while the average man was lucky to get 5 matches a month, most of them bots. Women started openly bragging about leveling up, monkey branching from guy to guy, always trading for a taller, richer, more exciting model while keeping the ex on the hook as a friend for emotional support and occasional cash. And through all of this, what did men do? They did what men have always done when the social contract breaks. They withdrew their labor, their protection, their commitment, and their resources quietly, methodically, without announcement or fanfare. They didn't march. They didn't scream. They just stopped showing up. They stopped proposing. They stopped caping for women online. They stopped rushing into burning buildings to save strangers who spent years calling them oppressors. They stopped enrolling in universities that treated them like criminals in waiting. They stopped working 80-hour weeks to provide for families that might be taken away tomorrow. They started lifting, stacking money, learning game, getting passports, and building lives that no woman could destroy with a single phone call to HR or the police. That withdrawal has now compounded for 3 straight generations. We're not talking about a few disgruntled guys. We're talking about tens of millions of productive, capable men who have looked at the deal on the table and calmly set it on fire. And here's the part that keeps me up at night. Not out of sadness, but out of sheer awe at the scale of it. Women never saw it coming. They genuinely believed men would keep showing up no matter how badly they were treated, because for centuries, men did. Men built the roads, fought the wars, invented the technology, and handed it all over with a smile because that's what protectors and providers do. But protectors and providers are not slaves. They are not ATMs with legs. They are not emotional punching bags who exist to absorb contempt and still pay the tab. When you remove every incentive for cooperation and replace it with punishment, contempt, and legal extortion, men don't get angry in the way women expect. They get quiet, they get strategic, they get gone. That's where we are in November 2025. The silence is so loud now, it's deafening. The dating apps are graveyards for average men. Marriage rates have collapsed to levels not seen since the Black Death. Birth rates in the West are below replacement by such a wide margin that governments are panicking behind closed doors. Japan is 20 years ahead of us on this timeline, and their solution is robots and government funded anime pillows. We're next. Women are finally feeling the cold. The heat is off, the lights are flickering, and the strong, independent boss babe is sitting in the dark wondering why nobody is coming to fix it. She's making another video. I make 80,000 a year. I have my own place. I go to therapy. I love God. I cook. I clean. Where are the men? And 10,000 guys in the comments are typing the same four words. You were warned, because we did warn them for 20 straight years on forums, on YouTube, in private group chats, in marriage counselor offices that women never attended. We laid out the math. We showed the divorce statistics. We begged, we pleaded, we tried to negotiate a better deal. And the response was always the same. Not all women, and man up with toxic masculinity. You're just bitter incels, get small dick energy. So we shut up. We walked away. And now the same women who mocked going their own way as a cope are live streaming from their cars because they're living in them. This is what collapse looks like from the inside. It's not Mad Max and explosions. It's quiet desperation in the suburbs. It's single mothers rationing chicken nuggets for their kids while scrolling Tinder for a savior. It's women in their late 30s and 40s realizing that the government check isn't coming. The good men are overseas or checked out entirely. And biology doesn't negotiate. It's women waking up at 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling, finally understanding that all those years of I don't need a man weren't empowerment. They were a slow motion suicide pact with reality. And the craziest part, men aren't coming back. Not this time. There's no great reconciliation on the horizon, no mass return to the plantation because kids need fathers. The risk is too high. The reward is non existent. And the peace of walking away is too sweet. Men have tasted freedom, and freedom tastes better than obligation ever did. We're building parallel societies now. Crypto communities where wealth can't be seized in divorce court. Gyms that are de facto men's clubs. Overseas enclaves where women still greet you with a smile instead of a subpoena. Digital nomads who haven't set foot in the West in 5 years and never plan to again. Men who have replaced the dopamine of female validation with the dopamine of deadlifts, business wins, and sunsets in countries where nobody hates them for being born male. The old world is dying, and it's dying in slow motion on TikTok Live, one desperate plea at a time. So when you see another video of a woman crying about where have all the good men gone, understand what you're really watching. The final credits of a movie that started in 1965 and ends with an empty chair at the dinner table and a generation of children who will never know what a stable two-parent household feels like. That's not Schadenfreude talking. That's history rhyming in real time. And the rhyme is almost over. We're entering the next phase now, the one where the coping turns into bargaining, the bargaining turns into rage, and the rage turns into laws that try to force men back into the cage with financial penalties, conscription threats, and shame campaigns 2.0. Then they'll call it toxic bachelor tax or male responsibility reform or some other Orwellian nonsense. They'll try to guilt us, shame us, legislate us back into servitude. It won't work. You can't negotiate desire. You can't legislate commitment. You can't shame a man who's already free into putting the chains back on willingly. The genie is out of the bottle. The horses have left the barn. The bridge is burned. And the men are on the other side living better lives than they ever imagined possible. That's the part they never understood. Walking away wasn't the cope, it was the cure. Let's keep walking this road together. Because the next chapter is where it shifts from observation to prophecy. And I want you to feel the weight of what's coming, like a cold wind rolling in off the horizon. By the spring of 2026, the first wave of mass evictions will hit the headlines, but not in the way you think. They won't call them single mother evictions. The media will spin it as housing crisis deepens for working families. Inflation continues to crush the middle class. Anything to avoid saying the obvious. An entire demographic that was told for 30 years they didn't need men is about to become homeless in numbers we haven't seen since the Great Depression. Entire apartment complexes in mid tier cities, places full of $60,000 a year HR managers, teachers, social workers, and government clerks who all bought the lie will go dark. Lights off, Section 8 wait lists years long, and landlords who used to accept vouchers now demanding 700 credit scores and three times the rent and income because they've been burned too many times. You'll see GoFundMe's pop up by the thousands. Help Ashley and her three beautiful children keep their home. The photos will be professional. The kids angelic. The story always the same. Laid off, medical bills, car broke down, baby daddy nowhere to be found. And for the first time in a decade, those GoFundMe's will sit at $47 out of $15,000 because the men who used to empty their wallets for a sad story have closed the apps, deleted Venmo, and moved their money into cold storage where no sob story can touch it. The white knights are dead. They killed themselves off with one too many you go girl payments that never got so much as a thank you. Churches will try to step in at first. The same churches that spent years preaching happy wife, happy life and hosting women's retreats about finding your purpose outside of marriage and motherhood. Their food pantries will be emptied in a weekend. Their benevolence funds will be drained in a month. Pastors will stand in front of congregations that are now 70% female and realize they have no masculine energy left to organize work crews, no deacons with trucks, no men willing to give up their Saturdays to fix some single mom's roof when she spent years telling them masculinity was toxic. The pews will be full of women in Lululemon looking for miracles, and the offering plates will come back lighter than ever because women give less when they're the ones in need. Schools will feel it next. Breakfast programs, backpack programs, angel trees at Christmas, everything that quietly relied on a few TradCon dads writing big checks or dropping off pallets of groceries will collapse. Teachers, mostly women, will start dipping into their own salaries to feed kids who come to school hungry because mom spent the last $200 on her nails and a night out for her mental health. Behavior problems will explode. Little boys acting out because there's no male authority figure anywhere in their lives will get medicated harder. Little girls learning to manipulate female teachers the way their mothers manipulate the system will become mean girl warlords by fourth grade. And then the crime wave hits. Not the dramatic movie kind, although that will come later, but the quiet, desperate kind. Shoplifting at Walmart becomes so bad that entire aisles get locked behind glass. Boosters, mostly single moms with kids in tow, will clear shelves of formula, diapers, laundry detergent, anything they can resell on Facebook Marketplace for 50 cents on the dollar. Car break-ins will skyrocket because catalytic converters pay for a week of groceries. Prostitution will explode, only this time it's not the cracked out streetwalker of the 90s. It's the former yoga instructor on OnlyFans and seeking arrangement, telling herself it's empowering while she services men old enough to be her dad for rent money. Politicians will hold emergency sessions. They'll wheel out the usual suspects. We need more funding for women and children, while we need paid family leave. Fatamban. We need universal basic income. And for the first time, the bills will die in committee because the men in the room, many of them red pilled, or at least exhausted, will ask the question nobody was ever allowed to ask. Why are we subsidizing a lifestyle that directly destroys families and then asking the taxpayers who avoided that lifestyle to pay for the cleanup? That's when the mask fully slips. That's when the rage phase begins. You'll see articles blaming misogyny for the crisis. Hashtags like hashtag male accountability and hashtag step up will trend as women demand that men who never signed up for this mess suddenly become responsible for it. They'll try shame campaigns, billboards, PSAs, celebrity tearful interviews about how men have abandoned their duties. They'll trot out the few remaining blue pill pastors and influencers to scold men about God's design for leadership while ignoring that God never designed family courts that incentivize destruction. When shame doesn't work, they'll turn to force. Watch for the bachelor tax proposals that start floating in Europe first. Extra taxes on single men with no children to fund social programs. Watch for co parenting mandates where men who earn above a certain income get assigned to support circles for single mothers, whether they like it or not. Watch for the return of conscription, only this time framed as national service that just happens to target childless men aged 20 to 45 because someone has to pay for the future. They'll try to close the exits. Passports for men under 50 will suddenly require financial responsibility affidavits. International wire transfers over $10,000 will get flagged if the recipient is in Thailand or Colombia. Crypto exchanges will be pressured to implement family support liens, where a woman can claim part of your Bitcoin if she has a child support claim, even if the kid isn't yours. And every single one of those measures will backfire spectacularly because men have already left the building, not just physically, though millions will be gone, but spiritually, financially, emotionally. You can't tax a man who earns in crypto and lives in a country that doesn't care about your court orders. You can't conscript a man who renounced citizenship and works remotely from a beach in Bali. You can't shame a man who deleted social media 5 years ago and hasn't looked back. The harder they squeeze, the faster men disappear. By 2028, entire cities will look like gender ghost towns. Downtown areas full of overpriced cocktail bars and brunch spots will board up because the women who supported them can't afford $18 mimosas anymore. And the men never liked that scene anyway. Dating apps will become digital welfare offices where women list their bills in their bios and beg for a real one to pay them. The few men still active will be the bottom of the barrel, the ones women rejected at 25 who now get to pick from the leftovers at 40, and even most of them will say no thanks. Birth rates will hit 1.1, 1.0, maybe lower. Schools will start closing by the dozens. Pension systems will teeter on the edge of collapse because there aren't enough young workers paying in. Politicians will promise immigrants will fix it, but the immigrants will look at the culture, look at the family courts, look at the contempt for men. And many of them will bring their wives and daughters and build their own parallel communities instead of integrating. And somewhere around 2030, the historians will look back and mark this decade as the great unraveling, the moment when Western civilization discovered that you can't run a society on the labor of people you spent 50 years telling were the enemy. The moment when independence turned into isolation, empowerment turned into destitution, and you go girl turned into please come back. But here's the part most people still don't get. Even now in late 2025, men aren't waiting for an apology. We're not holding our breath for reform. We're not secretly hoping the system changes so we can come running back. We're building something new. In the ashes of the old world, men are creating parallel systems that no government can regulate, no woman can weaponize, and no blue pill simp can undermine. Crypto economies where your wealth is yours alone. Remote work empires that let you live in low cost paradise. Brotherhoods, real ones, not the fake corporate kind, where men lift each other up instead of tearing each other down for female approval. Fitness cultures that turn soft boys into hardened men in 12 months. Knowledge bases that teach the next generation everything the schools refuse to: how money works, how power works, how women work, how to protect yourself legally, financially, emotionally. We're raising sons, if we choose to have them at all, in environments where they'll never hear that their natural instincts are toxic, where they'll learn game before they learn algebra, lifting before they learn victimhood, and self respect before they learn to simp. And the women who figure it out early, the quiet ones, the ones who never bought the lie, the ones who still cook and smile and appreciate a man's protection and provision, they'll be fine. They're already pairing off with the men who never fully checked out, building traditional families in flyover country or overseas, having four, five, six kids, and homeschooling them to avoid the poison. The rest, they made their bed. Now they get to sleep in it alone. That's the future rushing toward us at 100 miles an hour. Not with a bang, but with a long, slow, quiet fade as the lights go out one by one in houses that used to have fathers. And when it's all said and done, when the dust settles and the historians write the final chapter, they'll call it the great opt out. The moment men looked at a burning building, realized nobody inside wanted to be saved, and simply walked away to build something better. We didn't start the fire, we just stopped feeding it. And now, as we stand here in November 2025, I want you to really let the timeline sink into your bones. Everything I just laid out isn't some distant dystopia. It's the logical extension of trends that have been compounding for 60 years, trends that every single expert, academic, politician, and talking head swore would never have consequences. They said men would always come running back. They said the system was sustainable. They said biology could be negotiated with, that desire could be mandated, that you could spit in the face of human nature for half a century and nothing bad would happen. And they were wrong, dead wrong. And the proof is in the tears rolling down thousands of faces on your phone screen right now. But here's where the story turns from tragedy to triumph for the men who saw it coming. Because while one world is collapsing under the weight of its own delusions, another world is rising, one built by men, for men, and increasingly with the small percentage of women who never drank the Kool Aid. I'm talking about quiet compounds in Texas and Idaho, where families with six, seven, 8 kids are being raised on land paid for in cash, homeschooled, off grid, and armed to the teeth. I'm talking about digital nomad hubs in Medellin, Bali, and Bucharest, where 28-year-old software engineers pull six figures remotely, lift 5 days a week, date feminine 22-year-olds who think feminism is a mental disorder, and laugh at child support orders that will never cross an ocean. I'm talking about crypto millionaires in their 30s who took the money they would have spent on a wedding, a house in the suburbs, and a minivan, and instead bought freedom in the form of Bitcoin, real estate in Paraguay, and second passports they'll never need permission to use. These aren't the exceptions anymore. They're the vanguard. And the beautiful part, they're not loud about it. They don't make TikToks bragging. They don't argue with feminists in comment sections. They don't need validation from a society that hates them. They simply live, they build, they lift, they stack, they protect their peace like it's the most precious resource on earth, because it is. While one side is live streaming from a 2012 Honda Civic with 2 kids in the backseat and a GoFundMe link in bio, the other side is watching the sunset from a balcony in Thailand with a woman who cooks dinner wearing nothing but an apron and a smile, grateful that a strong man chose her. That's not fantasy. That's Friday night for hundreds of thousands of men who made the decision 5, 10, 15 years ago to stop playing a rigged game. And the numbers keep growing at every single day. Another 10,000 boys turn 18 and open their phones to see what the world is offering them. They see their fathers broken by divorce. They see their teachers medicate them for being boys. They see dating apps where they're invisible. They see jobs that demand everything and give nothing back. They see a culture that calls them predators for looking at a woman twice. And instead of crying about it, they close the apps, cancel the college applications, buy a gym membership, open a crypto wallet, and start building a life that no one can take from them. That's the real red pill, not anger, not bitterness, not even hate. It's clarity. Cold, hard, unbreakable clarity. The kind of clarity that lets a man look at a crying single mother on TikTok begging for help and feel nothing. Not because he's cruel, but because he already knows how that story ends. He's read the script, he's seen the movie 1,000 times, and he's made the decision that his time, his money, his energy, his future children, and his freedom are worth more than being a rescue raft for someone who spent a decade calling men like him trash. That's not heartless. That's boundaries forged in fire. And those boundaries are saving lives. Male suicide rates are already dropping in the demographics that discovered this truth first. Depression rates are falling. Gym memberships are at all-time highs. Entrepreneurship among men under 35 is exploding. Men are traveling, learning languages, building skills, making friends, and discovering that life without constant female drama is not just bearable, it's paradise. Paradise. A word most married men forgot existed. So when the final collapse comes, and it will, when the welfare state buckles, when the cities become no go zones for anyone with a Y chromosome, when the last blue pill simp wakes up broke and alone at 50, wondering where it all went wrong, the men who walked away early will already be gone. They'll be on islands, in mountains, in countries where thank you still means something, raising sons who will never apologize for being male, raising daughters, if they have them, who will never know what OnlyFans is, living proof that when you remove poison from your life, health returns. And the women who spent years mocking them, they'll be left holding the bag, a bag full of cats, debt, regrets, and children who hate them for destroying their fathers, a bag full of memories of parties they don't even remember and men they can't even name, a bag full of government promises that turned out to be lies. That's the real reckoning. Not men riding back in to save the day, but women finally, painfully, irrevocably realizing that the day was never coming, that the cavalry isn't late. It's gone and it's never coming back. So, to every man watching this right now, I want you to hear me loud and clear. You are not the villain for protecting yourself. You are not broken for refusing to be used. You are not immature for choosing peace over chaos. You are not a coward for walking away from a war that was declared on you before you were even born. You are the future. You are the remnant. You are the builders of what comes next. And to the women who still have time, who are watching this with a knot in their stomach, knowing deep down that everything I've said is true, there is a narrow path left. It's humiliating. It requires swallowing pride the size of a mountain. It requires admitting you were lied to, that you participated in something destructive, that you need men more than you ever wanted to believe. But that path still exists for now. Find a man who hasn't fully checked out yet. Approach him with humility. Offer value, not demands. Cook, clean, submit, appreciate. Build him up instead of tearing him down. Have his children and raise them right. And maybe, just maybe, he'll let you in. But the window is closing fast. And when it slams shut, it's not coming back open. Ever. This is the end of one story and the beginning of another. The story of how men stopped saving a society that hated them and started saving themselves. And in doing so, saved the only parts worth saving. So as we close this out, I want you to really ask yourself, which side of history do you want to be on? The side crying in the dark, begging for help that will never come? Or the side building in the light, surrounded by brothers living free and never looking back? The choice is yours. But the clock is ticking, and all roads, every single one, lead to MWA, men walking away. What did you think about all this? Do you agree? Do you see it playing out in your own life, your city, your family? Drop a comment below and let me know. I read every single one. Like the video if you liked it. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you like the video, share the video. And just remember that all roads lead to MWA, men walking away, and cheers.
Nothing says you care like crypto. Nothing can compare. Nothing says you care like crypto. Oh, nothing can compare to crypto.